Hey peeps, it's Tara from the Scary Movie Project, and I've got some cool news to share with you. I'm making a movie. That's right, I'm producing and directing a short, female-driven gothic horror film called The Strangle of Ivy. If you want to see the film, all you have to do is back the Kickstarter at the lowest level. Of course, you'll get a bunch of fun extras and behind-the-scenes content at higher levels too. You can even be a producer. Check it out at bit.ly/The Strangle of Ivy. That's bit.ly/The Strangle of Ivy. I'll see you all over there. And she tells him, Thomasin hath got the sign of her womanhood. and she's old enough now to leave and serve another family. That is how she said it. I wrote that down.
I'm just laughing because I like your delivery for it. I'm just laughing at that.
She hath got the sign of her womanhood.
Right.
Hey peeps, this is the Scary Movie Project, the podcast where we talk about scary movies, share our perspectives as filmmakers, and follow Black Phillip around singing our spoilery spoilers. I'm Tara.
Black Phillip. Greetings.
I have the whole song.
Greetings to one and all. I am Matt. And yeah, Black Phillip is a scary creature. Today is 2015, well, maybe 2016, I guess. I don't know. I'm confused sometimes.
Yeah, 2016,
16. I think. A family in 1630s New England is torn apart by the forces of witchcraft, black magic, and possession in 2016's The Witch, which I think is a pretty fabulous movie. I'm glad we're going to talk about it today.
Okay, huge spoilers. I love this movie. It's
the twins.
So good.
Black. Yeah.
So good. I have the whole song. We will be singing it.
So this movie is pretty intense. I went to see it in the theater. I don't remember the last time I went to see a movie in the movie theater.
You got to see it in the theater?
Yeah. Opening weekend, 2016. It was like President's Day or something.
This is one that, so we buy certain films on Blu-ray, like not a lot, but like certain ones, if they are really good, instead of just like buying them on streaming, we buy them on Blu-ray, so we have them, and we bought this. Yeah,
I think
it's one of the few.
$10 somewhere, but yeah, I bought it too. It's pretty great. It really is.
Yeah, it's so good. And it's directed and written by Robert Eggers. Mm-hmm. It was his directorial debut. That's right. So that's right. He has made The Lighthouse, which I don't know. Have you seen that yet?
I want to see it. I know it's weird. I know it's strange, but I do want to see it.
I liked it. It was, but it was definitely a strange movie.
Yeah, I want to see it.
And then he's got a couple new ones. He's got a new one coming out, Northmen.
Yeah, with
about Vikings.
Yep. Okay, that might be interesting.
Was it with Walter?
I don't know.
Koster Landau, whatever. I think that's who's in it.
Well,
anyways. He's got a Viking one coming out, and then I think he may also be working on a remake of Nosferatu.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about
that. I think that was him.
Okay.
I mean, it's about to be 100 years old, so...
Doesn't mean it needs to be remade.
Fair.
Fair. That doesn't mean... Just because something's old doesn't mean it needs to be redone.
That is true.
Whatever.
So shall we dive right in?
Yep. I'm not going to argue about remakes. It's going to take too long.
No. Here we go. First, we hear music, and then the title comes on. The VV Itch, as my husband and I like to call it.
Stylized.
The Witch.
A New England folktale, as it's other.
A New England folk story.
Yeah.
I think it's whichever. But it's VV. Okay, tale. Wait, I have it on my shirt.
A New England folktale.
Oh, you're right. It's a new. Can you see my shirt?
I can.
A New England folktale. Yeah. I'm wearing my witch shirt.
I have a picture in the house somewhere.
It's double V's instead of a W because back then they didn't usually write a W. They wrote two V's to make the W sound.
This predates the Salem witch trials. This is a long time ago.
It does. It's the earlier witch scare in America.
They never say what year it is. I'm reading that. They never said what year it was, though. I don't believe.
I thought it was in the... Maybe not.
Well, they say it's the 1630s.
But we know it's in the 1630s.
It's a very long time ago.
Yeah, it's a long time ago, guys.
Yeah.
We were not alive.
No.
Although it may feel like we have been alive that long, we have not.
No one listening to this episode was alive.
So it opens on Thomasin, played by Anya Taylor-Joy.
Which a name that I would like to give to a pet one day. I like that.
Anya Taylor-Joy?
No, Thomasin.
Oh, Thomasin. I was like, wait, what?
No. She, by the way.
Okay, Thomasin makes more sense.
This was her first movie. She's like blown up now. She's like a legit movie star.
Oh, she's hugely blown up now.
She's a legit movie star. She's like,
she
what,
did,
22 years old or something?
What was that chess show called? She did the chess show that was so popular recently.
This is funny. I can't actually name a lot of the stuff she's done. I just know she's done a lot of stuff. She's like 20. Yeah, she's like 23 years old. And she's like,
yeah, she's pretty big now.
Huge.
And she's an interesting looking person. Like, she's very pretty, but she's kind of got strange features.
Well, that may have been part of the reason she was cast.
It might have been. She's a little, she's beautiful, but she looks a little bit disconcerting.
She has a very unique look, and it works well with something like this and other stuff she's been in. So
definitely in this, it works because it looks so, everybody looks so severe and like, they're just very plain and not lush. Right? Everyone is sort of thin, and everyone is sort of,
well, they don't live the greatest
overworked.
They don't live the greatest life.
No, and they're about to get kicked out of their community.
Yeah.
So Thomasin is staring straight ahead as her father's making a speech in court about his beliefs and stuff. And then the family is banished from the plantation, or, their community, and they leave.
It's just not going to work out well.
Right. It's like, oh, this is already starting off pretty bad.
Yeah.
They're getting kicked out of town.
Yeah.
And the gates of the town shut behind their wagon as they ride away, and the children are singing a hymn. And then we see the father, William. He's like bowed down to the earth, and he raises his hands in praise because they found this like uninhabited place near the woods. And then we see that they've built a farm. So it kind of jumps a lot in that like first three or four shots right there.
Right.
And then we see Thomasin at her prayers, and she's confessing to God that she's a sinner and she's been idle and disobeyed her parents and little things like that. And as she prays, we see the family working around the farm.
So maybe not at this point, but I hadn't watched it in a while. I watched it again last week, maybe fourth or fifth time I've seen it. And I'm trying to figure this part. Maybe this is my misunderstanding of this. These folks are from England, yes, is that correct?
They're from England.
Okay.
Yes.
Are they, or are they Scottish? I'm having some trouble with these accents. They don't sound British to me. They sound Scottish to me.
I think it may be a different. It's not an RP. It's not a received pronunciation or a standard British like upper crust accent that we're used to. I think it is like a North accent.
Do you hear that at all when you hear them talk in this movie?
I just hear it as a kind of odd accent. So I don't know that I specifically was like, oh, it's from Scotland, but
that might be some.
But there's so many different British accents.
That's, again, maybe some ignorance I'm getting on my part on it. But when she's talking that scene, she's talking about she's saying me prayers. Like, she almost sounds, if I had my back turned, I think a Scottish person is talking to me. But that's how I perceive it.
That's fair. Maybe they're from the north.
But that's what I mean. This was such a long time ago. Was this a dominant accent like at the time? And only because nowadays I know a British accent only has a certain way, 400 years later, right?
My guess is, as well researched as this movie is,
and that's the thing about
it, they decided exactly where in England they were from.
And so that to me,
and used that dialect.
I was going to get to that because we'll get to that later. Because one of the reasons I love this movie is because of, this was not just written down on a piece of paper like, hey, they're from this country. This was some serious, crazy research. But anyway.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. So they're working around the farm. The mother, Catherine, has a new baby, and she gives it to Thomasin to look after. And Thomasin's playing peekaboo with the baby, and she keeps on covering her eyes. And then one time, the baby's just gone.
Baby's gone.
And we're already like, this is 5 minutes into the movie, and we're like, oh, crap.
Right.
And it's just, it's literally like she covers her eyes for a second, split second, the baby's gone.
It's impossible. Like, it's impossible.
It is not possible.
Right.
And then we see a woman carrying the baby through the woods. And by firelight, we see the old woman
slow panning
castrate the
shot.
baby.
Yeah, well, we don't see.
Well, start to. She's about to.
They just show kind of the knife by candle. Thankfully, we don't see that, but you definitely, and that scene,
you know that's what's going to happen,
that
and then you
scene-
see her grinding it into paste
oh,
on a
man.
stump.
It's so accurate. Well, okay, it's accurate in the fact that it's what we've been told, that she made this salve, this paste that they always
Right.
said, this flying ointment. She literally makes a
Right.
flying ointment.
She rubs the paste all over herself
Yes.
and a large stick. And then later
Oh my
she goes and
God.
she flies into the air on the stick.
I remember,
and it's this gorgeous shot where she's silhouetted against the moon.
and the awful like screeching violins. And I remember sitting in the theater, seeing and thinking like, damn, I'm already like, 5-10 minutes in this movie, and like the accuracy of the stories are like crazy good. Like, this is what they said they did. Oh man.
And it's like, holy, they went there.
Yeah,
like they went there.
Right.
They are not pulling punches.
Right. What other which movies show something like that? Like, that was fantastic. Oh my God.
Yeah, you just knew. You were like, oh God, here we go. This is going to be a ride.
A little bit of Lords of Salem. We talked about that, last year. There's a little bit of that in there, but not like that. This was like, dude, this is awesome. Strap in. Like, I'm ready.
And this was what people said witches did back then. So like, it's from research.
And that's what I love.
So the woman who played the witch, Bathsheba Garnett.
Her name is Bathsheba, like, for real?
Yeah, her name's Bathsheba.
That's a
and
great
she
name
said she
for
had
a
some
pet,
trouble
too.
preparing for the scene. And because she usually tries to find like at least one redeeming quality in her characters to like give them depth. And she was like, it was almost impossible. Like, I'm here like eating a baby and grinding it into paste.
Yeah.
And she said she eventually like got in the mindset of like, she's eating this baby because she sees it not as a living creature, but like an object she has to consume to survive.
Right. And you know what? I don't know. They aren't full on well lit shots. They're just little pieces of her that you see. You don't really see her face really even.
No.
So it's kind of like, but you still have to have that idea to play it, obviously. But yeah,
right.
That scene is crazy.
But it's great how it's lit because it enhances the like scary factor because you can't quite see what's going on.
I wouldn't believe it if it was, some fancy, RE lights or some Kinos lit up somewhere to,
exactly.
Like,
it has to be this like dark, dim place. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So she rises into the air. She's silhouetted against the moon. Gorgeous shot. I mean, absolutely.
It's wild.
Yeah. Absolutely beautiful. And then Caleb, Thomasin's younger brother. There are 5 children. There's the baby who got
Samuel
taken already. Thomasin's the oldest. Then there's Caleb, and then there's the 2
Jonas and Mercy.
Jonas and Mercy, right? Jonas and Mercy are the little ones.
Jonas and Mercy, stop it!
Stop it! So Caleb is getting ready for the day, and we hear the mother crying. And Caleb sneaks a peek at his sister's chest while she sleeps.
Yeah.
And then she wakes up, and he tells her, like, all will be well, and he puts his shoes on and goes outside to his father. And William tells him mother hasn't slept since the baby disappeared. They can search no more. And the corn they're growing is bad. So he tells Caleb they've got to go into the woods to catch food. Now, the corn apparently is actually showing signs of ergot, which is a hallucinogenic fungus that, it's a hallucinogenic fungus that a lot of people attribute to real life stories of possession witchcraft, that like and people were all hallucinating.
That's what they, yep.
Yeah. Yep. So I thought that was interesting little tidbit that they stuck that in there.
Yeah, I think if you know your stuff, that you would kind of think. I know I was thinking about that, but that was very, I like that. That was good.
Yeah, so inside, Thomasin is listening by her parents' curtained bed. She can't see her mom, but her mom is still crying. And then William and Caleb are walking through the woods, and William quizzes his son on Christian catechism. Yep. Like you do.
Talk about accurate. Well, yeah, in the 1630s you did.
Yeah, I mean, that's...
Good God, these people were terrified of God, and oh my...
and that's something
these folks were out of control.
I had the note later, but we'll say it here. A lot of the dialogue was taken straight from texts of the time period.
Isn't that crazy? And you have to try to memorize that.
This may be partially from some text that was like on philosophical text treatise on the Christian catechism.
Because, this is... I'll just touch on this. We know what a lot of this stuff. I think I'm not going to repeat myself. We did a lot of this on our witches live stream. We talked about this topic, and I brought this up. And the fact of the matter is, okay, look, long story very short. In the end, witch trials and accusations all through with land disputes. Okay, we talked about that stuff. End of story. Whatever.
Yep.
But also, these folks were so terrified of God and the world they didn't understand. They blamed everything on it. And these people were praying 17, 20 times a day. They were thought they'd go to hell instantly if they didn't pray one day. Their lives were prayer. This was what their lives were.
Well, and they talk about that. That comes up later and we'll see it where the mom thinks that her baby's going to hell because he died without being baptized. So there's a whole, I mean,
but I'm not going to go on and on about it. We already know that part, right? So
yeah. So William and Caleb, they reset a rabbit trap, and Caleb wants to know what wickedness his baby brother could have done, like how he was born with wickedness, and if he's in hell. And then will Caleb also go to hell? He wants to know.
Right.
And William tells Caleb
he gets
that
intense, he's fired up.
He gets intense. Yeah. And he's like, well, no, basically he's like, no one can know. Like, he isn't like, no, you'll be fine, honey. Like, he's like, no one can know who's good and who's evil. Like, you just have to try and live your life the right way. Right. And so then William tells Caleb that he traded the mother's silver cup for the traps and not to tell her.
Yep.
So then we see Thomasin gathering eggs, and one falls and cracks open. It's got a dead baby bird inside it. It's all bloody.
That's gross. I was going to say one thing too, is you can already, again, like the whole trajectory, things aren't going to go well. You just know by watching him, he has no hunting experience. He has none.
Yeah.
And they really, you realize they're screwed. So yeah, anyway.
Yeah, they don't know what they're doing.
No, they have
in
no
fact,
idea.
Right now, the dog with William and Caleb starts barking.
Fowler.
And William tries to shoot a rabbit.
So we already have
a hare. They're called hares.
Yes, we have two pet names in this movie already. I like Thomasin, and I like Fowler is the name of the dog.
Fowler is good. And so, well, that makes sense because it would go after fowl.
Mm-hmm. Well,
right.
I don't know if that's why, but I like the name. So.
But that makes sense for a hunting dog because they would they would take them out to go get the fowl after they shot them.
You got a retriever.
Anyways, yeah.
For sure.
So they try to shoot the rabbit. William tries to shoot it. It misfires and it hurts William's eye.
Gunpowder blast all over him.
Yeah, he gets gunpowder blast in his face. Now, in colonial New England, hares or rabbits, whichever, were considered magical creatures. So
familiars?
They were often associated with witches, and sometimes as actually being the witch.
Yeah.
Like that they were thought to be able to turn into the hare so that they could spy on people and stuff like that.
So familiars, cats, hares, toads, owls.
Yep.
Birds, some forms of birds. Yeah, those were the list of familiars that they would talk about. Yeah.
Yeah. So Mercy and Jonas now, and here's where we get the song.
Jonas and Mercy.
They're chasing the black goat around, singing about Black Phillip.
I hate those two twins. I hate them.
Oh, they're little
so
shits. Annoying.
They're just little. I mean, God.
But that takes a lot to make you pull out a curse on this record.
But I think that's the point, though, right?
Right. They're totally obnoxious.
Yes, they're
spoiled. They're little spoiled brats.
They're not pleasant little
because they're the youngest.
And especially when you live in a society like that where all you do is work. You have these two. I realize they're 4 and 5 years old. I get that, but they're not making anyone's lives easier. So
no. They're buttholes.
Yeah.
So the song goes. Do you know the song? You want to sing it with me?
Go ahead. I'll let you sing it.
Okay. Black Phillip, a crown grows out his head. Black Phillip, to Nanny Queen is wed.
Okay.
Jump to the fence post, running in the stall. Black Phillip, king of all. Black Phillip, king of sky and land. Black Phillip, king of sea and sand. We are ye servants, we are ye men. Black Phillip eats the lions from the lion's den.
All right, I never would have known that, and I never would have looked it up. So kudos to you for that. I just recite the two of them just going Black Phillip.
Yeah, I should have done it with a high voice. To Nanny Queen is wed.
Oh, they're the worst. So Black Phillip is terrifying, right?
Right. Well, okay. So we're gonna get to some Black Phillip stuff that's actually kind of truly a little scary.
Man.
because so Thomasin calls to the children and they won't come to her. So she gives up and she goes to sit by the forest. She's staring into the forest. And then the goat gets all rowdy and William has just come back with Caleb and he has to wrestle it into the enclosure. Well, apparently the goat was really difficult to train, Black Phillip.
It's a goat. What do you expect?
And in one of the scenes, and I think this might have been the scene because when we get there, you'll see the other scene where Black Phillip lunges at the father, at William, that is a plot point.
Yeah.
So I think it must be this scene where it happens. It wasn't supposed to do it. It wasn't in the script. It just happened on set and they just went with it.
Well, so that's funny. This movie uses two things you should never do in movies. Two of the three things you should never do. Two of them working with animals and children. Mm-hmm. And the third is never shoot anything like on a boat or water or something. They don't do that one, but they do two of the other ones. So there you go.
Yeah, they do. They're near water.
Yeah, but
they're by the creek.
Yeah, but they're never actually on a boat.
They're not on the water though. Yeah. So then, mother, Catherine, is mean to Thomasin and complains about being left alone. And she sends Thomasin inside and the two youngest inside. And Caleb tells mother that they went into the forest to look for apples because he thought he saw a tree.
I thought I seen a tree.
She's mad that they went.
I thought I seen a tree.
I thought I seen a tree.
I thought I seen it.
And she tells him that she doesn't want him to go off the farm.
Right.
So now Thomasin is by the creek and she's washing clothes and Caleb joins her and he peeks at her chest again. He must be hitting like puberty age.
Hey, he's like 12 years old probably, yeah.
Yeah, I think the actor was 13. So yeah, he's probably like
11,
supposed
12.
to be 11 or 12.
Yeah.
And she asks him why he's dallying,
Yeah.
and he won't answer. So she starts
Dilly-dally.
splashing him and he just acts all moody. But she calls to him and he goes to sit in her lap and then they get into a tickle fight.
They sure do.
Which is a little awkward.
Yeah. Siblings, whatever.
Well, I think it's a little awkward because he's been peeking at her chest. I think
that part is true, yes.
He's hitting that point and there's no other girl around for him to look at.
There definitely isn't.
Like,
he's not hanging out at school. There's no party on Friday night.
Yeah, like if they were still in town, he might be looking at a neighbor girl, but
well,
there's no one around.
He'd go to hell
There's
for
no
that
one
too.
else.
So
yeah, totally. So then Mercy shows up and she says, "I'm the Witch of the Wood."
I am the Witch of the Wood. Yeah.
and she says Black Phillip says, I think Thomasin says something about like, you're just running around. We're all doing chores and you're running around. She says, Black Phillip says I can do what I like.
Right.
And she tells him a witch took the baby and she's seen it.
Yep.
And Thomasin gets angry. And so she starts screwing with her and she's like, I'm the Witch of the Wood and I stole him. And she's like advancing on Mercy and Mercy's super scared.
Yep.
And then she makes Mercy swear not to tell mother and father. And when Mercy runs away, Caleb's like, well, why did you do that? And she says, I don't want your pity. She's like, leave me alone.
Right.
She's angry because she feels like she does all the work. And the mother is mean to her, like doesn't seem to love her as much as the other children.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely what's going on. That's a huge part of what's happening in this right now. Yes.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of it. And so at dinner, father says grace. They eat their meager portions.
So my question for that scene is, I've done a fair amount of reading about this movie, and I think it's this accurate. Do you like Barry Lyndon, by the way? It's the, okay. So that movie's famous. It's a great movie, but it's famous for its shooting it literally in candlelight,
in natural light.
Actually shooting it in candlelight using like 0.8 stop lenses, like literally open like as far as you can go. Did they do this in this movie? And
they used almost entirely natural light for this movie.
So they shot that
that's
scene
what the cinematographer said.
In a hut they built with candlelight. With I would think,
they didn't say it was 100% natural light, but they said it was mostly natural light. So they may have had like a little bit boosting it, but
there's maybe some small light somewhere, but it's probably like a 1.1, 1.2 lens, I would assume. Yeah. And that's amazing.
It's a lot of motivated lighting where it's really what would actually be there as opposed to
is what's so good about
like
this
we
movie.
were talking with the witch scene, as opposed to like we've got a bunch of big soft boxes and and we've got kickers for this thing. Right. Yeah. So
maybe there was like a big soft box overhead somewhere very dim or something like that. I don't know. But yeah, making that as authentic, and I'll get to that, what I love at the end, but that's a scene where you're watching. At this point, what I came to see in the theater, I have now been rewarded. Like I am now falling in love with what I'm visually seeing at this point.
Yeah.
And I'm in my seat and I'm very happy so far. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it.
So Mother asks Thomasin what she's done with the silver cup. And if she lost it, and Thomasin says, I haven't touched it. And Mother says, well, something is amiss on this farm. It's not natural. And, you know, the sheep start buying, and Mother says, Thomasin, didn't you bed them down before dinner? And she sends her out to do it. So Thomasin takes the lantern and she goes outside, and there's a rabbit or a hare in with the sheep. And it's the same one that the father had tried to shoot.
Yep.
And the mother and father go to bed, and he tells her that he fears she dwells too much on this affliction. And she says God has cursed the family, but he argues that he didn't do this to humble them, but to show them more of his grace. So they're having the Christian philosophy.
Everything you do is wrong.
Argument again.
And yeah, right. It's just it's crazy.
Right.
I can't imagine.
Well, and God didn't do this because this didn't happen because we're cursed. It happened because God wanted us to learn something.
Right. Hey, whatever you
or
want. Or
something like that. Like, yeah. So she says they never should have left the plantation.
Well, that's true.
And she,
that
right.
True.
He should have sucked it up and not gave his speech in the trial.
Nope.
So she says she wishes they still had the cup so they could sell it. Because she knows the corn isn't any good and they're not doing very well finding food.
Nope.
And she tells him, Thomasin hath got the sign of her womanhood. and she's old enough now to leave and serve another family. That is how she said it. I wrote that down.
I'm just laughing because I like your delivery for it. I'm just laughing at that.
She hath got the sign of her womanhood.
Right. I mean, everything
so
was
she's
so
old enough.
like it was so like proper. Like you could never just like be yourself. Like everything had to be this delivery and
right
proper English. Oh my God, it's just wow,
right.
It's just crazy.
It's very formal,
stupid.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, kind of.
Whatever.
So she says that Thomasin's old enough to leave and serve another family, and he says he'll send her off tomorrow to serve a family he knows. Thomasin hears all this.
Yep.
So she goes outside and she finds Caleb sneaking out.
Kids have been eavesdropping on their parents for hundreds of years.
Yes, this is
hundreds.
I mean, I'm sure that they have. This is just life.
Well, and you're living in a hut with like, one, maybe like a what's the word I'm looking for? I'm blanking here.
A loft?
Yes. Besides that, when you're all in one room, you can pretty much hear.
Yeah, you're all in one room. I mean, there's curtains around the parents' bed. It's not another room.
Right, exactly.
It's just curtains. So Thomasin goes outside and she finds Caleb sneaking out. And he wants to go look for food, so Thomasin goes with him. And they find a rabbit in the trap. And Thomasin is like remembering their younger days in England and how they had glass in the windows, but Caleb doesn't remember it. So the dog starts barking and runs off after a rabbit. And Caleb goes after him, and Thomasin is thrown off the horse that they had taken with them. And back at the farm, the family is calling for them both. And then we see Caleb alone in the forest, and he's walking along with a gun and praying. And then he hears the dog whimpering, and he stumbles and falls, and he finds the dog dead. Mm-hmm. Which I hate.
We don't like
which
that.
We know we hate. We don't like that on this.
It's pretty interesting how often we talk about movies that actually have that happen.
I know. Well, I think it's a way for horror movies to ramp up the horrifying things that happen. Like, I think to most people, killing a dog or a cat seems less scary and horrifying than killing a person.
Probably.
And so it often comes first.
Yeah. Yeah.
Although, of course, this first was the baby, which is like...
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
Probably like an 11 on the 10-point scale.
Right off the bat. Anyway.
Yeah. So anyways, I think a lot of movies do that as like a way to kill something without losing a character and without it being as big a deal yet.
Mm-hmm.
Although to me it is a huge deal.
Yeah, I don't want.
I would rather every person in the movie die and the dogs live.
Yeah, I mean, you can do whatever you want to people, blow their heads off, whatever. But yeah, leave the pets alone, man.
Yeah, just
alone.
leave them alone. They're innocents in all this. So Thomasin wakes up alone in the forest, and it's evening now, and she can hear the family calling for them. And Caleb is going deeper into the woods, and he follows the rabbit to a small, like, hovel.
I would have called it a hut, but okay, yeah.
A shack, a hut, something like that.
Shack, I think, is more too modern. Yeah, hovel, that works.
Okay, a hovel or a hat.
Some sort of
a
dwelling.
hovel or a hut. Yeah, a dwelling in the woods.
Some sort of dwelling.
A woodland dwelling.
Yeah, you can do the accents of them too, right?
And so this beautiful woman comes out and she walks towards him and she smiles and he goes to her like seemingly against his will. Mm-hmm. And she touches his forehead and she kisses him. And then her very old hand reaches up and grabs the back of his head. Oh, it's so good.
It's great, isn't it?
And the shots in this are so good too. It's so vivid. Mm-hmm. Like the colors are much more saturated than the colors in any other part of the movie.
When there is color, right? You're saying. Because a lot of it.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like the movie is very gray, but in this it's all green, and she's in the red cloak.
Right.
And her lips are very red, and like it's just very saturated.
It's excellent. Yeah, well done.
And apparently they shot all the witch scenes, like all the scenes with the witches and the supernatural stuff. Mm-hmm. Like when the ghosts come back later, was shot at a higher frame rate.
You know, I like that, and I've wanted to experiment with something like that.
Yeah, so really... everything is at 24p or 23.9, 23.98.
So if anybody wants to see something really cool, and plenty of stuff has done it, but go watch like the first battle scene from Gladiator.
Yep, Gladiator.
Or the storming the beach and Saving Private Ryan. Those are like really super high frame rates that puts the artifacting in it, like so you can wave something. It looks badass. I love it.
So a high frame rate, when you shoot something at a higher frame rate, so there are more frames per second, right? It goes instead of
a shutter wheel opening. Closing.
That gives you crisper image, right? So you don't see the motion blur that you would normally see at 24p, 24 frames per second. So then when you slow it down, right? If you go to fewer frames per second, or a slower shutter speed, it gives you more motion blur.
That's crazy.
So everything looks a little more blurry. So that's like two ways that cinematographers can affect their.
It works. It looks great. I love it.
The mood of their movies.
I love it.
So the mother is panicking now. She doesn't want the father to go out looking for Caleb. She wants him to go to the town and get help instead. And mother tries to get Thomasin to tell her why they were in the forest, but she won't speak. But then father finally admits that he sold the cup. And the mother blames the father for Caleb's disappearance and slaps him. And then she like collapses and he carries her inside. And Thomasin says she'll go bed down the goats, but the mother says she doesn't have to go in the rain because now it's rain. They're all inside and it's raining. And she says, I'll go bed down the goats. And the mother's like, no, you don't have to go in the rain. She's like trying to be nicer to her, I guess. Probably because she realized she was wrong about her stealing the cup.
Yeah, maybe.
But she says, no, she will. And her mother kisses her forehead. And you see Thomasin like have this moment where she's like, this is all I wanted. Right. I just wanted my mom to love me.
Just be nice to me.
I just want my mom to love me and be kind to me. Like, that's all I want. So Thomasin goes and tends to the goats out in the shed. And she sees Caleb by the fence. And he's naked and he can, like, barely stand up.
He's all busted up.
Yeah. And he can't walk, like nothing. So she takes him inside. They get him to bed. And then the mother nicks Caleb's temple. And Thomasin holds a bowl under it to bleed him because that's... part of the way
you know,
they did
that's a great way to
medicine back then.
make somebody better. Take their blood out of their body because you don't need
Right,
that stuff,
just
right?
take some blood out of their body.
don't
I
need
mean, that's what
blood.
they did in the 1600s, though, right?
Yes,
Like
we discussed.
they just took people's blood.
They did weird things. They didn't know any better.
So no, they leached people. Like, come on.
They didn't know.
So they do that.
You know what they would say? This is true. If they brought in an actual doctor, someone who actually had some whatever medical experience you had back then, you know what they would say? They would actually they would tell you that he's possessed by the devil. They would actually tell you that.
Yeah, they would be like, you've got to bleed him.
Right. That was actually like a diagnosis.
That was a perfectly reasonable thing to do at that time.
And it was expected that most people probably thought that was what someone was going to tell you.
Sure.
Crazy.
So they bleed him and they pray over him. And then the next day, Mercy is talking to Black Phillip, and then she tells Thomasin that Black Phillip says she bewitched Caleb and she's a witch.
Accusations.
That Thomasin is a witch.
Yep.
And Thomasin, they're in the shed, and Thomasin is milking another goat, and she realizes that the goat, instead of milk, she's getting blood. So that's another thing like the egg thing with the dead baby bird in it. That's another thing that's like a sign of witches. At foot. A witch is a foot.
Witch is a foot. I like that.
And then so Mother now is telling the father that Caleb's malady looks like witchcraft, but he doesn't believe it. And he says, we'll go to the plantation tomorrow. We'll find a family for Thomasin to serve, and we'll find a doctor for Caleb. And the mother wants to mother's like, I just wish I was home. And he's like, well, we're going back to the plantation. She's like, no, England. Back in England. Yeah,
Not
like,
here.
no, England. And she says, you know, she basically apologized. She's like, I didn't mean to be a shrew to ye. But I've become as Job's wife. And she says her heart is turned to stone. And she admits that her faith has been weak since the baby disappeared, and she's afraid she'll never find it again. So,
I mean, that's a pretty awful thing that happened. So,
oh yeah, and she's having some loss of faith in her religion, which makes sense when you've had that kind of traumatic experience, right?
Sure.
So that outside, the family works on the corn, and Mercy sings another Black Phillip song. This one I don't have. Sorry.
It's all right.
And then they hear Caleb scream, and they all run inside to him. And he's yelling, she's upon me. And he's writhing on the bed, and his mouth is bloody, but it's like locked shut.
That great, and the light from outside is just spilling on
right
him the whole
on
time.
Him.
And it's like, that's the only thing they're using. And he's going having this crazy, he's just I don't know what he's talking about. He's
talking crazy. Well, he's saying stuff like she's upon me, she's pricking me, things like that, which are things that people said in witchcraft trials.
Yes,
they would
spectral evidence.
Yes, it was considered actual evidence, and in the trials they would be like, she
and then
hits me now. Oh,
you see the two twins.
Well, that happens in a second. Hold on. First.
Oh, wait.
First, they get his mouth open and an apple falls out.
How about that?
Then the young kids accuse Thomasin of being a witch.
Yep.
And father makes her, the father's like, you know, do you love God? She's like, yes. He's like, do you love the Bible? Yes. Do you love prayer? Yes. And then they all pray for Caleb. But Mercy and Jonas can't remember their prayers.
How about that? And they always said, remember, if you couldn't recite, they would say, when people would be ready to hanged or burned to the stake, people would recite the Lord's Prayer, which was supposed to be evidence that you were not a witch.
Right.
Because if you were, you wouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah.
So
we can't remember. We can't remember our prayers. And then they start yelling, stop, Thomasin, stop.
And that's the kind of stuff that happened in these trials. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And Caleb starts yelling again, and he's writhing around, and the kids fall down on the floor and they imitate him.
Exactly. That's it.
And the rest of the family, the mother and father and Thomasin, they pray around Caleb, and suddenly he seems better. And then he smiles and he says another prayer.
My Lord,
he seems like he's in ecstasy. And I don't mean he seems like he's in a religious ecstasy. No, he seems like he is He seems like he's having an orgasm.
Yeah, he's doing something. I don't know.
I mean,
what,
he seems like he's having an orgasm, is what he seems like. But so he is in ecstasy, and then he just dies.
Yeah, he just dies.
Like, just all of a sudden, he's gone.
Straight up dead.
And Mother is shaking him and crying. And Thomasin tells Jonas and Mercy to get up. But then the mother screams at her to get thee gone. And Thomasin runs outside, and her father follows her. And he's holding her while she cries. And then he says, you must tell me, Thomasin. He thinks she's a witch still. Like, he actually thinks she's a witch. Yeah. And he tells her that the bargain she made can be ended if she just tells the truth. You know, so she says, I love this part. She's like, oh, I'll speak the truth.
Yeah.
I know you plan to get rid of me. I know you plan to rid the farm of me. Yeah, I know you lied about the cup and you let me take the blame for taking Caleb into the woods. Like, and then she says, that black goat is Lucifer and Mercy and Jonas are the witches. Yeah, and he grabs her and he drags her away.
He doesn't want to hear any of that.
Yeah. And then inside, Mercy and Jonas are laying side by side, just like panting. And the father drags Thomasin before the mother and makes her tell the mother what she said about Mercy and Jonas. And the father yells at the kids, but they don't answer. And mother panics again. And then father puts Thomasin, Mercy, and Jonas, all three of them, in the shed.
Locks them up in the
shed. And barricades them in.
Like in Cabin Fever.
Yeah, he just barricades them in. He's like, I don't know, all y'all are witches.
Right, what else is right? What am I going to do with you?
All y'all are witches. I can't be dealing with this.
Yeah.
And so they're all in the shed. And then I love it. They ask each other if they're witches. Like, they're like, are you a witch?
How about you?
Are you a witch?
That's so stupid.
Are you really a witch?
Oh, man.
And then Thomasin asks Mercy and Jonas if Black Phillip really speaks to them, but they don't answer. And the mother and father now, they bury Caleb. And the mother climbs into the grave and holds him, which is another great visual.
After she climbs into the grave, right, then they bury him. Yeah, crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, they put him in the grave and she climbs in and holds onto him. And then you see them like putting the rest of the dirt on top of the grave. And then that night, the father he's outside so the kids can hear him because they're in the shed and he's outside and he's confessing to God that this is his fault because he's infected with the filth of pride.
Right.
And he begs God to save his children. And then in the middle of that night, the mother gets out of bed and she sees Caleb holding the baby.
Right. This is crazy.
And she hugs them. And out in the shed, the children and Thomasin hear something. And then the mother's like nursing the baby. And Thomasin and the kids see an old witch, and she raises her head and she laughs at them, like she's just there with them all of a sudden.
Isn't she like sucking on the goat or something like that?
I think she's eaten one of the goats. Yeah, because later we find all the goats dead.
Weird, yeah, right. That's crazy.
So then we see the mother, and she's nursing the baby again, but she's actually got a raven that's pecking at her breast.
And she's like laughing like a lunatic.
And she's smiling and laughing, and it's insane and horrifying.
Yes, and you're like, what the F just
happened? It's so creepy.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
So the next morning, the father wakes up and he gets out of bed, and he doesn't really look at the mother, but we see that she's laying there and she's got blood on the chest of her dress, like dripping down from one nipple.
Yep.
So he goes outside and he sees that all the goats except Black Phillip are dead. And Thomasin is laying there. And Black Phillip gores him and then rams him into the side of the house against the wood pile. Yep. So the kids are gone too. Like, Mercy and Jonas, just gone.
We don't know what happened to them, right?
We don't know where they went. They're just gone. So he gets rammed and then rammed into the side of the house against the wood pile. And I'm guessing this might be the point. At some point in this movie, he actually was a little bit gored by the goat.
I wouldn't be surprised.
The actor was. And so I think that might be at this point that the goat actually like scratched him pretty bad.
Dangerous, yeah.
Yeah, right? So Thomasin goes to him, but he's dead.
He's dead.
And the mother comes out and she grabs her hair and is like, what hast thou done?
Yeah.
And she is now fully convinced Thomasin is a witch. Like, it's over.
Yeah, these two.
So she attacks Thomasin. And Thomasin like grabs a nearby spade and whacks her mother's face.
Yeah.
And her mother is just like
bleeding.
And she chokes her.
Yeah.
Until Thomasin finally just like kills her with the spade.
I mean, what are you gonna do?
She just
right?
I mean, yeah, like she doesn't know what to do. She attacks her with the spade again, and mom is dead.
Your mother's. I mean, that's what that's an insane situation that someone like that would be trying to kill you, but like you got.
Yeah.
I mean, what are you gonna do?
And then Thomasin lays there with her mother on top of her, and she like holds her and cries. And then she stands up. She like huffs her mother off of her.
See, that scene made me claustrophobic only because, well,
being stuck under a dead person.
Well, the scene is great, right? It just it shows her dead and the blood dripping, and then nothing else is really happening. And then it just goes. It's kind of like wide shot, and it's just them sitting there, like nothing's happening. It's just quiet, and there's no movement, there's no action, there's no dialogue, there's nothing, and you're just watching it, and you're like, you're basically forced to watch this. And yeah, like. I have claustrophobia, like elevators and stuff like that, but I couldn't imagine like being stuck underneath a dead body. Like, oh my God. One, it's a dead person, but like, get off me, like get off.
Well, and I mean, man. And they're heavy. Like they call it dead weight for a reason, right? When something is extra heavy, they call it dead weight. Like
I have dragged people that have passed out and have been sleeping before, and they are not easy to do. Yeah.
Right. So, they're heavy. So you see her like heft the body off of her, and she stands and stares into the forest. And then she goes inside and she like takes her dress off. So she's just in her shift, and she wraps herself in a blanket and falls asleep at the table. Yeah. And when she wakes up, it's dark.
It's my favorite part.
And she goes out to the shed, and Black Phillip is there, and she follows him inside. Mm-hmm. And by the light of the candle that she's got, I conjure you, Black Phillip, to speak to me, she says. She conjures him.
I command you, speak to me. Yeah.
Yes, she conjures him to speak to her. And for a moment, nothing happens. But as she starts to turn away, she hears this whisper, "What dost thou want?"
Yeah, so this scene is...
And he says, "Wouldst thou like the taste of butter? A pretty dress?
Live deliciously.
Wouldst thou like to live deliciously?
Would you like to see the world?
Wouldst thou like to see the world?" Yeah. Okay, so the butter thing. Let's talk about the butter thing for a second.
Let's talk about the whole scene. Is like
because nowadays you're like, what the hell? The taste of butter? Like,
well, no, then shoot.
But in the 15th and 16th centuries, the Catholic Church had actually declared that eating butter was a bigger sin than lying, blasphemy, or impurity.
Everything was a sin. It's ridiculous. Yeah.
So yeah, Protestant Reformation actually, Martin Luther, he actually was against this edict, and it was often only enforced on the poor. But yeah, so that's why the taste of butter is in there, because it's considered a big sin at that time.
Yeah, and if you want to look at the fact that it's something that poor people wouldn't have anyway, so
yeah.
I mean, everything
so
was
he tells her
crazy.
He tells her to remove the shift, and he tells her, "Dost thou see the book?" He wants her to sign it.
Remove thy shift, he says.
Remove thy shift. Yeah. And she says, "I don't know how to write my name." So he says, my hand will guide yours. And he helps her sign the book.
My hand will guide thee. And then
my hand will guide thee. That's it.
But how about, isn't that so interesting that you learned about literacy back then, right? Like, people, that was back then. Okay. So nowadays, if you were given, in our modern society, and I can't say all over the world, but in society you and I live in, okay?
Yeah.
If you were given a document, you're told to sign your name with blue or black ink, correct?
Yeah.
Hundreds of years ago, your options were to sign or to make your mark, because people were
you could just make an X.
Because illiteracy was, people were like, she has no idea how to read or write because she's living in 1630, God knows where, New England.
Yep.
And she can't read or write, I'm sure. So yeah, she couldn't do that. So that part, again, we'll get to all the accuracy stuff later, but I thought that was so interesting.
So then we see her walking out to the woods naked with Black Phillip. Yeah. Now, here's another bit I got. For their nude scenes that she did and that Caleb did. Yeah. They wore tightly fitting underwear. Okay. And then it was digitally removed by the VFX artists.
Because they weren't going to go they were both under the age of 18. They weren't going to be.
They're both too young. Right. So yeah, so they wore very tightly fitting underwear, and then it was
she may have been
VFX artists
17 when they made this movie. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, probably. So then we hear chanting as she approaches a bonfire with several witches around it, and they're performing their rites.
So the question I have
they're
about
shaking
this
their
here,
big sticks, and they're
right,
dancing, and they're moving all strange.
Isn't the story as it goes? Most Sabbaths like this would happen at a crossroads, somewhere at a crossroads. This is definitely not at a cross.
I think
I'm just gonna throw that in
that
there.
was one that some would, yeah.
Okay, all right. I'm just gonna throw that
so
out there.
The witches all rise into the air, and then so does Thomasin, and she smiles just gloriously.
First time she's been happy in the whole movie.
Yeah, it's this huge. It lights up her face,
right.
and she rises to the treetops,
right.
And that's the end of the movie.
And that's it. And then it has that little note, like you said earlier. You mentioned earlier about how a lot of this stuff was taken from written documents
from the
and
time.
things they found, and so I thought that was very, very interesting.
Yeah. Now this film also was shot in 25 days.
Yeah, so that's
which seems pretty quick.
So that's the stuff
for a
I
film
want to
like this.
I want to get in. Yeah. So anyway, I think it's great. I really do. And I'm not going to go on and on and on, but I kind of feel like I repeat myself sometimes with some of this stuff, but this is just what I love. Like, we want to see something we think we could do, or we that's pleasing to us. Right. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And these kind of movies, when I see stuff like this is one of the ones, like I say, like with Rob Zombie when he made Lords of Sin, it's like they went into my brain and took everything out and made a movie. Like all the stuff I would have done. This is how every scene I would have done would have been. I literally remember thinking in the theater, that first scene in the beginning where they're showing the witch when she's running off with the baby, remember?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember thinking to myself in one part of it, like one of those great, tracking, gliding, shots would look amazing. And literally, as I'm thinking this to myself, that's the shot that is in the movie. And I'm like, okay, this is what I'm talking about. Like, this is why I love this stuff, because they're like reading my mind. They're just thinking this through. This guy, Robert Eggers, grew up in New England. He knew all the myth of this stuff. This dude was like going to make this thing crazy accurate. The sets. So they shot this in Ontario, I believe, some remote place in Ontario. Mm-hmm. I mean, the clothing is 100%. You can, poo-poo your nose at this, whatever, but say what you want. This stuff is legit. Like, he had clothing made for the actors. The houses, like the thatching, the roofs, it's all accurate. This is all done as it was in the mid 1600s. This is legit. And that's what makes it so great. And it's so dark. And that one scene, that are just the establishing shot of the farm, where it's from a distance. It's a real wide shot with the smoke coming from the chimney. Like, that's just so spooky. It's so perfect. It's so amazing. They pulled all the color out of everything. It's so bleak. It's so black. They talk about the red with, the apples and the witch's outfit. Those colors parts are so great. Like, this is everything that if I was in charge of this film, I would have done it this way. This is exactly how it would have looked. Yeah. It's so perfect. The composition sometimes isn't like amazing, but it doesn't need to be. It's just so well done. The acting is, the dialogue is representative of the time, and it's superb. Yeah. And it's spot on.
I think the acting is fantastic for that weird stilted language that we're not used to.
And that's what I meant. Right. With that,
they made that seem natural to them.
Yes. And I know a lot of them I know the mother and the father, they're British actors. I know that. So I know it was maybe a little bit easier for them, but some of that, this is hundreds of year old language they're speaking. It cannot be easy to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the work that went into it, and to your point, in 25 days to do all this, holy cow. It's just like scary, because it's like real life kind of scary, I guess. Like, all this stuff is happening, and this faith in, at the end of it, like we talked earlier in our live stream about how witches are, what you see in a movie, this stuff's not real. Like, it's persecution. It's not. But this movie makes the old-fashioned story that you and I have been told about a witch and makes it real. There is a witch living in the woods, and she ate this baby.
There are witches.
Witches.
There's a whole coven of them.
We find that later. And they're real. And that trope, that story, is real.
He did put the ergot on the corn, so that if you wanted to say,
that's true.
Oh, this was all hallucination, you could.
That's true. That's a good point.
I think it's super real.
I think super real.
In the movie, it's totally real.
And then I think the last thing like I said, I could go forever, but I'll mention at the end, the scene where she goes into the hut and talks to Satan. Right? Like that's when that was the scene when I found it was on YouTube. I would Google that, like, talking to Satan the witch scene.
Right.
Like it made the hair stand up on my neck when I was in the theater because it's so.
Oh, and when all you see of him is his hand on her shoulder.
So I love I love his spurs. I love the
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
the walking. I love that he's like, looking, but then they show his face and that ruined it for me. Like, I don't want to see your actual
Do
face.
they show his face?
Yes, you can see his face. Yes, you can.
I thought it was so dark you couldn't really see it.
I just watched on my the Blu-ray the other day and I saw his face, and maybe I'm imagining it.
I have a pretty old TV, so it might have seemed darker on my TV.
Okay. But I swear you see his face, and it kind of takes some of it away from me, but I still love it. I love it so much that I totally stole the idea and shot a piece on it. That I don't love it, so I didn't really publicize it very much. But I can give it to listeners if you want to watch it. But it's a woman dealing with like a drug addiction, but it's the same story. I just love that scene so much. I had to recreate it to get it out of like my system because I love it so much.
Yeah.
It just really made, I don't get scared anymore. And like that scene really, really spooked me to like, it really freaked me out. So yeah, this is what they say. I don't know what they call this. They gave it some new name for horror. Not visceral horror, but like just mood and atmosphere horror, they say.
Like atmospheric. Okay.
Yeah, that it's just so much of that, just what it's created. It's just like these people's situations is like their life suck. It's so horrible. It's just like, it's super creepy. It's super spooky. I just think that it's just so tremendously well done.
Well, and really I think for me, I also think it's a very feminist film.
So that's a huge part of it too. It really is.
Because
it is.
This young
patriarchal
woman
society, right? And
well, yeah, she's in this patriarchal society. She has no escape.
No.
So why wouldn't she go with the devil? Like, I mean, especially after she's lost everything. But she's upset that they're going to just send her off to another family to serve them. She has no say over that. Like, she has no control. And then everybody's calling her a witch. Well, everybody in the town is going to call her a witch now that her whole family is dead or missing. Yeah, so what other freaking choice does she have but to just be like, fine, I'll be a witch. Like, everybody's going to say I'm a witch, so I might as well have the power that comes with it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a huge part. You have to wonder, like, when that is your only option, do you embrace it or how do you feel about that? Like, that's very interesting.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. Another little tidbit. So did you notice the film is not shot in 1.85 to 1? It's not the normal widescreen. It's 1.66 to 1.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And the cinematographer, Jaron Blaschke, however you say his name.
Do you know what they shot on with? I don't know.
I don't know what they shot on, but I know they shot in 1.66 because he said it's a little more timeless because you don't see a lot of the 1.85 before like the 50s. So this was an older sort of shape. And then he also said that's a shape you didn't see in the arts until very recently, the 1.85. That timeless quality was attractive. Also, it was just going by my gut. He said it just felt right. It also had benefits of being able to make the house a little more claustrophobic. Yeah, right?
Sure.
And then you could show more of the height of the trees looming over the characters. Mm-hmm. And he said, and you could still have the whole family in the shot and have it work out. So,
I mean, that's what I'm saying.
I thought that was interesting. They totally shot in a different aspect ratio just because they were like, this seems more appropriate for this story.
Everything they did was
how you should do it, right?
Yes.
You should be making all those choices based on what serves your story.
Right. Don't just say, well, I used this lens last time and it was so what? I mean, it may have been great, but
right.
It may be even better to use this one and this. Yeah, you got to like decide on that. It has to be
like
for that.
I want to do this cool trick shot. Well, if that cool trick shot doesn't serve the story, then don't do it. Why are you doing it?
That's exactly right.
If you can make it serve the story, great. Do your trick shot. But
everything they did was just it was actually so well done. It was perfect. I mean, they did such a great job. Yeah,
it's so good.
It's so atmospheric and it's just spooky and it's not like a lot of people. I met plenty of people that don't like it at all. That's fine. It's your decision, whatever. But I think It's really good. I think it's really good. I think it's excellent.
I heard the Satanic Temple actually like approved of this film.
Hey, all right. Very good.
So that's fun.
Yes.
So next up, it's a surprise because we haven't decided what's next up yet. So
we just gave you this. We just gave you this movie, which is so good. So you can take your time and watch this and digest it.
Yeah. Watch this movie, love it because it's fantastic and it is worth loving. And you know, of course, after you're done watching this movie, email us. Let us know what you thought of it. Send us your movie suggestions because maybe then next time it won't be a surprise what's coming up next if you suggest some stuff to us.
Right.
You can send all this to thescarymovieproject@gmail.com and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at The Scary Movie Project. And don't forget to subscribe or follow the podcast. Rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, where the heck ever you're listening so more people can find us. And that is all. Peace out.
The Scary Movie Project podcast is produced by Tara Garwood and Matt Lolich. Learn more at thescarymovieproject.com.